Hello there, and welcome once again to The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Meyers. We're here every week, meeting interesting people and dealing with topical issues. And today an issue that's been a while since we've addressed this topic.
Well, it has been, and we're really pleased to be able to talk about, with our guest, the issue of how folks who are unable to employ attorneys can get represented, particularly in this case, in all sorts of areas of the law. But we may focus a little bit on the eviction side of it. But Michael Figgins, who is the Executive Director of Legal Aid Services Oklahoma, is going to be our guest.
All right, we'll look forward to it. Michael Figgins, today's guest in The Verdict. Stay with us.
So,
right now, 6 feet can feel like a long ways away. But from 6 feet, we can still smile at each other. From our doorways and our stairways, from opposite sides of the street and opposite sides of the country. Through fear and frustrations, we can remind each other that we are still here for each other. Because we can still smile at each other. And we're not going anywhere.
Military service ran in my blood, starting from my father, which joined the Navy, on the Chickasaw side, my uncle, which served in the United States Army. I'm Benjamin Espinosa, Chief Petty Officer, United States Navy, and I'm Chickasaw. I went to the Secretary of Defense's staff at the Pentagon in Washington, D.C., which ultimately led to becoming a combat support technician for Naval Special Warfare, specifically SEAL Team 10. I think to be proud and to love your tribe, to love being Chickasaw, you also have to love being American. You also have to love everything that America stands for. Equality, perseverance, professionalism, and power. I want my family to know that their father is a good person, but also feels that he has an obligation to the country and to love this nation. Anything worth having is worth dying for. The military and the country owes me nothing. I owe it everything.
See more stories about the Chickasaw people at profilesofanation.com.
Welcome back to the set of The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Meyers, and Kent's going to introduce today's guest.
as we indicated in the open, our guest today is Michael Figgins, the Executive Director of Legal Services of Oklahoma, Legal Aid Services of Oklahoma. He did his undergraduate work at Arizona State University, did his law work at Gonzaga. And then after that, for the past 33 years or so, he has been deeply involved and almost exclusively involved in providing legal services to those who can't afford to pay for them. A real big heart does have Michael Figgins. He's been in South Dakota, Arizona, Nebraska, Florida, and in 2012 came to Oklahoma and assumed his position that he occupies today. He's had an outstanding career in this service of helping clients that need some help, and has won a number of awards for his outstanding service. Michael, sure glad to have you. Thanks for joining us.
I'm so glad to be here.
Let's talk about the size of your organization here in Oklahoma. What does it look like from a macro level?
Well, Legal Aid Services of Oklahoma is truly an Oklahoma law firm. I believe it's the largest law firm in the state, so if anybody wants to work for a big law firm, Legal Aid is where you need to go. In that context, we have offices all over the state. In every community you think of, there's probably a Legal Aid office. In addition to those brick and mortar offices, we have attorneys embedded in another 70 nonprofits across the state. Could be shelters for domestic violence, for homeless, could be healthcare providers, reentry. Wherever poor people congregate, that's where legal aid needs to be. So it's about 255 lawyers, slightly over 300 total staff, and certainly we have the capacity to grow more. And that's probably a response to the tremendous need that legal aid fills. As you stated, providing legal services for low-income people. Currently in Oklahoma, statistically, there's one legal aid lawyer for every 11,000 low-income people. So we're not doing a good job of serving all those needs, but certainly doing the best we can with that kind of demand.
Well, with that size of a firm, you must almost always have openings. I mean, there must be some turnover in that position. You must always be looking for good attorneys to help.
The answer to that is yes, not necessarily to turnover, but expansion. As new issues come up, for example, sometimes when things are bad, it's not necessarily bad for legal aid. COVID is an example. Certainly we got additional resources we needed for unemployment and to respond to evictions and respond to increased domestic violence. So that resulted in more staff. So we have lots of opportunities all over the state to serve the poor, and there's a certain person we're looking for. I often go to law schools for on-campus interviews, and I'll tell the students of their class, maybe 5%, if they don't work at legal aid, they're going to be unhappy. They may not know that I'm there to save them from that fate, because it's happened many times in my career. Somebody will say, hey, you know, I should have went to legal aid. I interned at legal aid. I took a job at my Uncle Bob's firm, and I'm unhappy. I want to come back. And of course, by that time, they're in a salary structure that legal aid can't match, and they're just unhappy. So there's that certain percentage in every law school that I'm looking for, that I actively recruit first-year law school, get them in, interns. And they're the people who need to be at legal aid, belong at legal aid, and will thrive at legal aid.
I can say, I think, without fear of contradiction, that you are the largest law firm in the state by some considerable degree. How is your organization funded?
Funding legal aid is complex. We have over 150 different funding sources.
Wow.
The larger ones would be primarily the Legal Services Corporation, which is a nonprofit created by Congress, funded by Congress, but not a federal agency. They provide about 20% of our funding, but the funding comes from the state of Oklahoma, various cities, counties. The philanthropic community is very generous to us. Lots of grants, federal grants, private grants. We do actual campaigns, donor campaigns. Any way we can get resources in, we certainly are active doing that. And from time to time, we are fortunate to get funding to do special projects that help out as well. Our funding currently is about $30 million.
Wow. Well, tell us how we got you to Oklahoma. How did that come about?
Well, as you stated, I've been in numerous legal aid programs across the nation, because that's all I ever wanted to do. Came to that realization early in high school. I like to define people in verbs, and I'm a person who does good. I'm a gooder. I'm a facilitator. I'm a person who stabilizes others. So my only career choice was legal aid. Started in law school, and certainly at one point I was in Florida, Jacksonville, for almost 17 years. And this opening came up, and the person who was doing the recruiting was a friend I knew, and told me to apply. I did, even though I did it as a favor. He told me to come down for an interview. I did, as a favor, and I was certainly persuaded by the Legal Aid Services Board of Directors, and I've been here now since 2012.
I would assume that lawyers you hire have specializations or specific interests. Is that true?
The only specialization interest I'm concerned about is to serve the poor. And we can teach a lawyer everything, teach to be a great lawyer, trial lawyer, any legal area you can think of. Can't teach the compassion, can't teach the purpose. So that's the fundamental talent I'm looking for. And once that's there, we'll teach them, they'll teach themselves, they'll do just fine.
What are the areas of study that are most needed?
Well, if you thought of a pie chart, about 35% is going to be domestic violence. That's violence, it could be intimate partners for the most part, so that has only gotten worse. And it's primarily women, and with men as the abusers. It's a statewide thing. It's not particularly high one part of the state or another. Number two, right up there, is going to be housing. That could be eviction prevention. It could be unhealthy housing. It could be foreclosure. It could be housing discrimination. Next, probably a quarter, is going to be some type of benefit work. Appealing Social Security denials of food stamps, denial of VA benefits, Medicaid. So getting people on benefits who have applied and for whatever reason been denied. And the last major item is going to be debt related. These are going to be people who are being hounded by illegal debt collectors. A lot of these folks are people who have recently been released from incarceration, finding themselves in heavy debt that they didn't know exist. So this involves, it could be bankruptcy work, certainly it can be Rule 8 petitions to get the criminal justice debt to go away. So do a lot of work with debt because what's on the line is their transportation, their wages, because those things get taken away if they don't respond to the debt, and more often than not, they have a defense.
How do you recruit the lawyers for needs you have in your office?
Recruiting, I go on both ends. As I stated earlier, certainly involved with the 3 law schools, on-campus interviews, public interest fairs, and I go after the 1Ls. And sometimes law firms are not interested in the 1Ls. Let's wait till they get to the 2nd year or 3rd year. I want them at 1L. I want to find my person at 1L and then keep them, shepherd them, comfort them through law school, and bring them into the legal aid world. On the other end of the spectrum, there are other attorneys who are more seasoned, who could be a solo practitioner, could be a small firm, could be a big firm, who for whatever reason are tired of being a solo, tired of the small practice life, or want to finally give back, do something with purpose. We recruit successfully with older lawyers, mostly in their 60s, sometimes in their 70s, who want to do legal aid work. For example, a small practitioner, small town is very attractive by having health care benefits that they don't have as a solo practitioner. So on both ends of the scale, brand new and those who have been very, very seasoned.
Can a person have a private practice and help legal aid at the same time, or do you have to do one or the other?
Well, you can have a private practice and certainly give money to legal aid. You can have a private practice and be a contractor with legal aid. It may be less than their billable hour, but certainly it pays, so they can help in that regard. And certainly they can do pro bono, which is something we ask many lawyers to do. Some do more than others.
And rural Oklahoma, is there a specific need out there for more legal aid help, or is most of the need in the cities?
Well, if you define need as most of the cases that are going to be in the cities, but there's tremendous need in rural Oklahoma because there are no lawyers in rural Oklahoma to speak of. The ones that are there are prosecutors, judges, work for the government, the state. Very few private practitioners, the ones that are there, probably getting close to retirement age or are having a hard time. So there's not a lot of access to legal services at all, except for the legal aid office. And the poverty in the rural areas is just off the charts. So the need is pretty tremendous throughout the state.
Contrast, if you will, the work of public defenders with your lawyers.
Well, public defenders, as you know, there's a constitutional right involved. I have a right to a lawyer because I've been accused of a crime. So there's no question of whether they're going to get representation. They are. Legal aid has some discretion. If someone comes to us and we wonder about their credibility or think maybe this is not a good case, we can say no. Public defenders cannot say no. Another interesting difference is that public defenders in general see low-income people at their best. I'm going to look my best, I'm going to act my best, I'm accused of a crime, I want to present well, whether it's to my public defender, judge, or jury, whereas legal aid clients see their clients at their worst. They're in the middle of a domestic violence situation, they're facing eviction, they're homeless, and so it's different. It could be the same person, but it's different circumstances, and they certainly appear different under those circumstances.
We're going to get to a break. Michael Figgins is our guest. He's with Legal Aid Services of Oklahoma. We'll be right back.
At Witten Burridge, we're litigators. That's all we do. All of our clients, some sort of wrong has occurred to them. We try to right that wrong. Corporate America, they have all the power. It's sort of like going against an army. I like helping the underdog. That's what gets me up out of bed every day.
Our success rate is phenomenal, but that's not all they get. We care about people.
I'm very proud of what we've been able to do for our clients, and I'm looking forward to what we're going to do in the future. There's still a lot of wrongs that need to be righted.
OU Law has a history and heritage that are unparalleled. At the University of Oklahoma College of Law, we empower our students to pursue the career of their dreams. We have the highest U.S. News ranking ever achieved by an Oklahoma law school. We are the first law school in the country to launch a college-wide digital initiative. And this year, our competition teams ranked #2 in the nation. OU Law, generations of excellence, limitless possibilities.
When I came to work for the ODVA, I started realizing the opportunity to take care of veterans. It's a powerful thing when you realize that you are taking care of people that made history.
Working here is a calling. It's really, really important that they don't just come here to exist. We want to give them meaning to their lives. We try to make life happy and meaningful and fulfilled for our veterans.
Welcome back to the Set of the Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Meyers, and we're talking to Michael Figgins, who's of Legal Aid Services of Oklahoma. Let's talk about the underserved, and specifically those who might be going through the eviction process and might wind up homeless if things don't improve for them. That's a growing concern of yours in your office, is it not?
That's correct. What legal aid does in a broad sense is civil law enforcement, not criminal law enforcement. You think criminal law enforcement, you think police, prosecutors, prisons. I mean, lots of money goes into criminal law enforcement. Next to none goes into civil law enforcement. And you may say, well, maybe it's not important. But what is at stake at civil law enforcement is almost as important, maybe more so. What's at stake is your home. You can lose your home. You can lose your child, your job, all your money, all your assets. All these things can go away because of a civil law violation that you are not going to get an attorney appointed to you. And certainly what we're concerned about is housing, homelessness, evictions. It's pretty much rampant. And any given day in Oklahoma City or Tulsa, if you go to the forcible entry detainer docket, that's where the evictions happen, you'll see hundreds of people being evicted every day. So where are those people going? What's going to happen to them? Well, homelessness is a risk. Certainly residential instability, at least. Where am I going to live? Where am I going to go? Their job they may lose. Their child is going to miss out on school, absenteeism. They're going to be impaired both physically and mentally. Where are they going to go for health care? To the emergency room is where they're going to go. It's a whole series of bad things. And then they have what is called a scarlet E. You've heard of the scarlet letter? It's a scarlet E. And if you have an eviction, nobody's going to rent to you. So where do you go? You go where you can. If you're not in a camp, you're at somewhere that, well, we wouldn't live in. Bugs, infestations, mold, leaks, no utilities to speak of. That's what you have to do. And it's just more downward cycle, all because of the eviction, of which many, if not most, can be prevented.
What is a good result for a legal aid lawyer that's representing someone subject to eviction?
The best result we can get is to stop the eviction. And in study after study, Cleveland 80%, Dallas 97%, that's the percentages of cases in which a lawyer is involved, in which an eviction doesn't happen. Now, that doesn't mean we win the case and everybody. It could be as simple as, okay, it's going to be dismissed because they didn't provide proper notice, because they didn't follow the process, and there'll be an extra 20, 30 days, time to negotiate. Time is the key. When there's time, people will listen. Because once you get into the eviction mill, it's fast, it's processed, it's cheap, it happens. The average hearing is 5 minutes. That's what you get, 5 minutes. And the outcome is usually not in doubt unless you have somehow come across access to justice through legal representation.
Now, these eviction cases heard by Oklahoma State Court judges, I take it?
That's correct.
District judges?
That's correct.
Yeah.
When you think about how just the imbalance, when you go to rent or lease a property, an apartment or a house, you don't bring your documents for them to sign. They present you with, and so the imbalance starts right at the beginning.
Sure.
They've already worked out the protection of them,
sure,
presumably. And I think that's when people are shown where to sign, and very, very few people are going to take this document and even look at it themselves, much less pass it off to an attorney to see what they're actually getting into. But there's this assumption that whatever they're being handled is legal, and if I want this place, I'm not going to be able to make any changes, and I'm going to have to sign it.
Yes, it's not a fair relationship. I'm being offered as a tenant housing. I need housing. I'm not in a position to negotiate. Either you want the housing or you don't, and you're right. And you sign it, and what you're signing is a document that's going to have all kinds of fees and fines that you didn't even know were in there. So in addition to the rent, you're going to owe even sometimes as much as the rent in fees and fines. And certainly that's a way for landlords to make extra income. But the leases are a problem. But we've had tenants who had paid the rent and were facing eviction.
Now, how did that happen?
I'm the landlord. Maybe I don't want you here anymore, so I'm going to evict you. Chances are you're not going to respond. You're not going to respond on time, and I'll get the eviction. And I'll have my lawyer. You don't have a lawyer. I can always say, well, he violated the lease too. It's easy. And many times you're in that situation because you said something you shouldn't say. You said, Michael, landlord, can you fix this? Can you fix this mold? Can you fix this bug? Can you fix my heat? If you complain, there's no protection against you. And retaliation is often the result of tenants who complain.
Now, we air both in Oklahoma City and Tulsa. Is the situation different in either of those two cities, or are they pretty much the same?
Unfortunately, no. It's not different. And, it's not different really. I mean, I can't point to anywhere in the state where, it's different there. Yeah. So we should all be tenants there. So, I mean, there's a strategy to stop this. And certainly affordable housing is the key. I saw something the other day where Tulsa thinks they may have to spend $2.5 billion to create enough affordable housing. I don't think that's happening soon. So our suggestion is that prevention be part of any affordable housing strategy. It's like, let's turn off the faucet, let's have less water flowing out of the tub, and do prevention, save affordable housing, in addition to creating affordable housing. And so our strategy is what's called right to counsel. And it means just that. It's City of Tulsa, Oklahoma City, passing an ordinance that would basically say that guarantees that an eligible person gets an attorney if they're facing eviction. And to convince our leaders that this is something they need to do, we've created 2 pilots, one in Oklahoma City, one in Tulsa, and they're based on zip codes. In Oklahoma City, the zip codes are 73119, 73111. In Tulsa, 74105 and 74136. In those zip codes, we are doing an extensive marketing campaign, trying to get people as early possible. I mean, if it's mid-month and they know they don't have the rent for the next month, we want to talk to them then. But we want to see everybody. We don't want anybody defaulting. We want to get involved with everyone we can so we can go back to the city government and say, look what we did in these zip codes. And these zip codes were handpicked. They are zip codes with massive evictions, with large corporate ownership apartments from out of state. And so they're prime examples of problem areas in both of these cities that we're confident, Legal Aid's confident, we're going to have significant impact.
We've got about 45 seconds left. What can our viewers do?
My hope is viewers will recognize that housing is important, that no one should ever lose their home without right to representation, or at least as much representation as landlords have, and that as a result of that, we should seriously look at, invest in, and create a right to counsel for tenants in Oklahoma City and Tulsa so that their rights are enforced in our courts so they do not lose their home for reasons that are not legal, and that we can stop this crisis of homelessness and we can build affordable housing and prevent evictions at the same time and house the members of both of these communities.
All right. Michael, thanks for your work and appreciate
You're
your
welcome,
staff
Mick.
as well.
Yeah, you're on
You're
on a wonderful mission.
Yes, it is a mission.
Kent and I will have a final word after this.
This is the epidemic of my generation. This is my HIV. This is my Black Plague.
In the midst of one of our state's largest crises,
Oklahomans are dying from this preventable and treatable disease on a daily basis.
we believe there's hope.
That little pill will cause destruction through your whole life.
Watch the entire award-winning 9-part docuseries Killing Pain, made available by Fighting Addiction Through Education at killingpain.com.
It used to be okay in teachers' lounges. It used to be okay in maternity wards. It was okay in sporting arenas, college campuses, and office spaces. But now that we understand the deadly dangers of secondhand smoke, that's not okay anymore. So why is it okay that thousands of employees are exposed to it every day at work? Bottom line, it's not okay. Let's protect hardworking Oklahomans. Join the fight at stopswithme.com.
All children deserve a life of hope and love, but sometimes they experience a life of pain, neglect, and abuse.
When that happens, each child deserves all the quality assistance and representation that can be offered in our legal system. For more information, call 23-CHILD.
Oklahoma Lawyers for Children, helping to bring hope and love back to the lives of abused children.
You will always be mom and dad to me.
I think for us, once we got started and we began to see the tremendous need just within our state, it really was just a calling for us. The blessings far outweigh any obstacles that we've faced.
You will always be mom and dad to me.
I learn something new every day, and I don't know why I didn't know this, but not being an attorney, but you have a constitutional right to representation in a criminal case, but not a civil case.
That's correct.
And I guess I never really distinguished in that situation, but you can see when you talk to Michael and start studying some of these issues how important it is that there's a right to counsel in a civil case sometimes.
Well, there is, and in a civil case, for instance, dealing with children, you have a right to counsel. But that's by virtue of statute, not constitution.
We have some website information. You can get more information about Michael's work at Legal Aid of Oklahoma at the website, which is legalaidok.org. That's legalaidok.org. And we have a website, theverdict.tv. You can log on and tell us about a guest you'd like to see or a topic you'd like to see discussed. We'll see you next week right here on The Verdict.